Sitting and waiting for nearly 4 years, loved ones of Dr. Dennis Sandlin waited for his murderer to be brought to justice. Today, John C. Combs received 40 years behind bars. I was in the court as Combs learned his sentence. They say time heals all wounds, but for the family of Dr. Dennis Sandlin, it simply lessens the pain.
It was cold, it was calculated, it was premeditated. He had plenty of time to think about what he was doing and make that decision that day. And the reality is, Denny was probably one who, if he really wanted help, would have helped him.
For Sandlin's sister Leela, knowing Combs will spend the next 40 years in prison is a blessing, but she says her family isn't finished yet.
Well, we're going to be keeping close watch because we're going to make sure that he does spend his life behind bars.
Judge John David Cottle agreed, telling Combs, "I hope you don't make parole." Defense attorney Jim Bechtel says his client is apologetic.
He is remorseful and that he is sorry, and will be paying the price for it in the state penitentiary.
Several friends of Sandlin sat in court. One says more than a life was lost back in 2009.
Didn't just kill a doctor, he killed a community.
Smith says those close to her brother have helped her family keep fighting for him.
That's what's kept us motivated and moving at the times when we just didn't know if we could continue. You know, they provided us that strength and support.
Combs tried to speak after he was sentenced, but the judge would not allow it. Smith says her family wants to continue fighting for the rights of murder victims' families in court. Combs' sentence was part of a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to murder in order to avoid the death penalty.
It is a story you've got to see to believe. A Columbia man found a class ring at a flea market and made it his personal mission to return it to its owner. As WYMT's Morgan Lentes reports, little did he know how much that piece of jewelry would mean to a family in Harlan County.
An author once wrote, "When you look into your mother's eyes, you know that is the purest love you can find."
I take this picture everywhere with me.
But for Shelby Schilling, that look is something she only has in a photograph.
My older sister and me, whenever I was first born.
Schilling was only 6 days old when her mother Pam died.
I never got the chance to meet her or anything.
Schilling lived a normal life despite her mom being gone, or at least she did until a couple weeks after graduating high school.
It's such a coincidence.
That's when her family got some news they couldn't believe.
It's just a crazy story. He posted it on Facebook and it just somehow got back to us.
A man named David Grigsby had found a class ring at a Laurel County flea market and thought it belonged to Schilling's mother. The ring only has the graduation date and the name of the high school on it, but it was these small initials inside that helped Grigsby find its owner some 10 years later.
It's too big for my pinky.
How does she describe it all? Simply a blessing.
Some people call it like a God wink, like God's winking at you.
Holding the purest of love in the palm of her hand. In Harlan County, Morgan Lentes, WYMT Mountain News.
Schilling says now she wants to find out how her mom lost the ring in the first place and how it ended up at that flea market. She also says she will use her mom's ring as part of a necklace. Vivid memories of the battlefield. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Hensley.
And I'm Morgan Lentes. Every day we bring you stories often about what is wrong across the region.
However, today we are letting someone else tell you a story about how they served our country many years ago.
We're losing more of them each day. They are veterans of World War II. Today I sat down with 91-year-old Earl Fields. The Eastern Kentucky native begins our Veterans Day team coverage in his own words.
I stayed in the Navy 6 years, 1942 to 48. Before it was all over, I was first class radio operator. Air duty there was to pick up survivors when a ship was sunk nearby. I guess at times might have been scared a little bit. It didn't bother me though. I went through some pretty rough stuff. My ship got hit with a shell battery and killed 3 men right close to where I was.
Did you ever fear for your life when you were in such a dangerous place?
I didn't have sense enough to bother me, I don't reckon. I'm not one of the heroes. The heroes is the boys that didn't get to make it back home. that got killed in the service, and there was a terrible lot of them. Okinawa was where I was when the war ended. We escorted the USS Missouri into Tokyo Bay where they signed the treaty.
So you were there when they were signing the treaty?
Right there on the ship, USS Nicholson 442. We got enough recognition, I'd say. But I'm glad I got to serve, I guess.
Field service didn't stop in 1948 when he left the military. He went on to serve as the Leslie County clerk for 24 years before taking a well-deserved retirement.
Standing for religious principles. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Hensley. A Whitley County teenager refused to run a race because of the number she was given to wear. Cody Thacker says seeing what some connect with the mark of the beast made her sick. WYMT's Morgan Lentes joins us now live from Williamsburg with her story.
Yeah, Steve, you've all probably heard the saying, if you stand for nothing, well, you'll fall for anything. And the Whitley County girls cross country coach here tells me one of her runners refused to let that happen when athletics collided with her faith. For Cody Thacker, running is her passion, and she was ready to go for gold at her regional cross country meet held last Saturday.
I've been training since June for this race, and it's kind of like the climax of my season to run regionals and see how well I do.
But 3 numbers got in the way of that dream.
I just don't believe that 666 should be a number that's anywhere on your body, and I did not want that number associated with me. It kind of made me sick.
They call it a bib number, a tag given to each runner to identify them in races. For Coach Gina Crowley, the solution was simple.
And I'm very sure that the number was computer generated. I don't think there was any, type of, let's give somebody this number. But when it was brought to their attention, I feel like if it were possible, that it could have been changed.
Except KHSAA officials wouldn't change it, so Thacker turned to her faith, deciding her love for the Lord was greater than any race.
Of course, I was upset because I'd trained all season for it, but in another sense, I stood up for my beliefs and I stood up for God.
A representative for KHSAA claims meet officials were not told Thacker objected to the number for religious reasons.
We've made adjustments to uniform codes and things like that in the past when it's known that religious reasons are in play. Maybe had that been made more clear to the meet officials, they would have made that decision.
Both women say they did cite Thacker's religion as the reason.
I wouldn't have been more proud of her had she won the entire meet. She stood on her principles. She stood for what she believed in.
Would you do it over again?
Yes, I would. I would definitely stand my ground on this.
Thacker says she's received lots of community support. Now, the KHSAA official I spoke with earlier tells me those numbers were randomly assigned and that they're even given to the schools early in case they want to switch. But Coach Crawley says she doesn't see why it was such a big deal to change it the day of the race. Reporting live in Whitley County, I'm Morgan Lentes, WYMT Mountain News. Steve?
All right, Morgan, thanks.